Start with TikTok. So if we're gonna
like, comment, and subscribe,
then these are the stats that I care about. First is who. So who's on this platform? If there's a platform with tons of kids on it versus people who have gazillions of dollars, I'd rather be on the one with gazillions of dollars. How many of those people are on the platform is a function of how much market share that particular platform has captured of my ideal who. Next, we have what's my ability to grow on the platform. Some platforms are really easy to grow, some platforms are really hard to grow. The next one is the depth, because I don't want people to just recognize my face, although that is good, but I would much rather have them have a good relationship with me where I can provide tons of value, which then increases the likelihood of them converting. And then finally, I'm gonna give you the results that I have. Now, underneath of depth, I'll also give you a little bit more intrinsic stats like average view duration, average percentage viewed, so you can look at your own stats and kind of have that as a benchmark. So let's start with who. I looked at Pew Research to see which percentage of platforms have $100,000 families or higher, and how many of them are on that platform. Want to know what it is for TikTok? It's 27%. All right, so 27% of families, so almost 3 out of 4 are not on TikTok who make over $100,000 a year. That was surprising to me, but when you hear some of the rest of the stats, it will become less surprising. The next question is, how many do we have here? And so this is a function of market share within the United States, which on TikTok is 33%. Now we're like, okay, so we've got a lowish amount of people who make money. There's 33% market share across the US at least. Now let's talk about growth. Now, on TikTok, growth is one of the highest and best components of TikTok, as in it's one of the easiest ones to grow. But I will say that in recent history, it's become harder and harder to grow. And because of the way that they've changed the algorithm, what we've noticed is that shorts on one platform don't necessarily work on TikTok anymore. And so now it's platform specific. Something that works on Facebook Reels might not work on Instagram Reels, that might not work on YouTube Shorts, which might not work on TikTok. And so it's actually becoming more and more fragmented, which is why this video is so important. So you put your attention where it matters most. With all that being said, TikTok still ranks high among the platforms in terms of discoverability and your ability to grow from zero, meaning it favors newer creators. Now, it still may be hard, but it still favors people equally versus other platforms where they still skew towards larger creators. So when it comes to depth, our next marker, it's about how much time are they gonna actually spend per unit of content that we put out. So TikTok ranks really low here. So on the low side, you get something like 5 seconds to 20 seconds. At least these are the statistics that we have on the low to high side in terms of duration per view. Now, mind you, that's not a lot of time to provide a ton of value, especially if just someone's immediately scrolling. And if you absolutely murder it and you get 25 seconds from them, I think the main benefit you get is that they just recognize your face. I can almost tell whenever I get recognized in public when someone is a TikTok viewer, because they're like, you're that guy, I don't know your name, but yeah, I see you, right? Versus people on like YouTube are like, dude, you've changed my life. You've made me so much money. You're the best. I know your name. I bought your book. It's completely different avatar in terms of the experience. So then we have conversion. Now, TikTok has 2 things that are kind of interesting that you might not know. So number 1, Gen Z prefers Instagram DMs to TikTok DMs. And so in terms of your ability to convert people from TikTok, it actually tends to be significantly lower. Now, for very low ticket things like TikTok Shop are coming out, are having massive adoption, which is encouraging. But if you're selling any kind of services, which 78% of businesses are, this one's kind of tough. And so I'm gonna put this as low. And to be clear, TikTok a couple of years ago was amazing for new creators because it was the first one that had short videos, which is easier for someone to get into. It's much harder to make a 20-minute, high production, nice, valuable piece of content for YouTube versus a 15-second short that you can put on TikTok. But then the other platforms caught on and you got YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, the Facebook Reels, and all the other platforms that have short. LinkedIn has shorts now, like they're all over the place. And so let's get to the results. And this is where it gets really crazy. And so I have almost 900,000 followers on TikTok at the point of this video. And the amount of traffic that I get from my TikTok, despite being about 1/10 of my follower count, is only 2.5% of all of the traffic that goes to my page, which I've tracked on our CRM. And so it basically has 1/4 the effectiveness per unit compared to the other platforms, which means that some other platforms are disproportionately making up the volume. And the whole reason I wanted to collect all this data for me was because there was a business owner who was a winner of the school games, so school.com/games. And when he came out, he was like, yeah, it's really weird. I have 800,000 on TikTok and I have 200,000 on Instagram, but 90% of my revenue comes from Instagram. And I thought about that and I was like, wait a second. So think about this. The amount of time that he spends on TikTok, could he spend all of that time on Instagram and get 10% more to make up for all of it? And the answer is probably yes. And so that totally changed my perspective in terms of thinking, wait a second, we want to grow everywhere, but there's definitely some platforms where we get higher returns for our avatar, which is business owners. And so for you and your avatar, looking at the stats should give you where you should put your time so you can make the most money, especially if you're on a budget and you can't do 10 platforms, right? You can maybe just do 1 or 2. You should do the